Hi, my name's Nina Umpad, and today I'm going to be presenting my drug project on marijuana. And today I'm going to get started by talking about the history of marijuana. And so marijuana was, or also known as cannabis or the hemp plant, was first cultivated in Central Asia around 500 BC. The plant was grown at the time to make clothing paper and rope out of the hemp fibers. And so this plant had very, very different uses around the time. And because the hemp plant was easy to grow and easy to maintain and had many different offers and benefits, it was widely spread and introduced to Africa, Europe, and eventually the Americas around the 1600s. In the 1800s, an Irish doctor named Sir William Brooke O'Shaughnessy found cannabis extracts could lessen stomach pain and help people vomiting from cholera. By the late 1800s, cannabis extracts were sold in pharmacies in the U.S. and throughout Europe to treat stomach pains, to help increase hunger and lessen nausea. Recreational use of marijuana wasn't really introduced to the American culture until the 1900s, which was around the Mexican Revolution, and Mexican immigrants that traveled to the United States introduced the practice of recreational use. And at the time, this just kind of sparked a lot of fear, and it created a lot of anger because this was around the Great Depression. So this sparked resentment of Mexican immigrants due to the high rates of unemployment and public fear of weed being evil, resulting in ultimately the ban of cannabis by 29 states in the 1930s. Okay, the history of marijuana continued. There was a lot to cover. By the 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act was passed, and this was the first federal U.S. law that outlawed sale, possession, and transfer of marijuana nationwide. Then in 1996, the Compassionate Act of 1996 allowed California to be the first state to legalize medical marijuana use for people that are severely sick and have chronic illnesses. Following California, Washington, D.C., and 29 states, including U.S. territories, Guam, and Puerto Rico, allowed mild use for medical purposes only. And as of January 2018, 9 states, including ours, California, Colorado, and Washington being the first, have legalized recreational use of marijuana for 21 years or older, and medical marijuana use for 18 years or older. So I'm just going to shift the screen to show you a little bit of what the Marijuana Tax Act looked like back then. And at the bottom of that picture, we have the Compassionate Act of 1996, which you can see a lot of California was for it, so it was able to be passed. Now, the physical effects of marijuana. Within a few minutes of inhaling marijuana, your heart rate increases, breathing passages become larger, your blood vessels in the eyes enlarge, resulting in red eyes. So a lot of people do get symptoms of bloodshot red eyes. Your normal heart rate has 70 beats per minute, but marijuana use may increase 20 to 50 beats per minute or even doubled. And marijuana is known for the main physical effects of increasing your hunger. You have a lesson of nausea, reduced symptoms of headache, fatigue, and pain. Now, psychological effects would include emotional effects as well. And when marijuana is eaten or smoked, it can release its THC properties that are passed through the lungs and released in the bloodstream that ultimately lead to the brain and the rest of the body, causing psychological and emotional effects. The main psychological effects include euphoria, relaxation. You have heightened sensory motors in the brain, so a lot of bright colors stand out. You have laughter, an altered perception of time, and an increase in hunger, of course. Depending on how much marijuana is consumed or smoked, this may alter the psychological and emotional effects. So studies have shown people that smoke larger amounts have reported experiencing a bad trip. So they don't really experience that euphoric psychological effect. They usually have symptoms of hallucinations where they see things that aren't there, delusions, and a loss of identity. Short-term consequences, you have short-term memory problems, so you'll just forget little things. You have a delayed or lowered reaction time. You have an increase in heart rate, so you are at an increased risk of heart attack than people that aren't under the influence or smoking. Sexual problems for males, so they have problems with arousal during or before intercourse. Problems with coordination, so you really shouldn't be driving anything, heavy machinery, or you might be a little impaired while you're playing a sport because you're just not in your normal psychological state. The long-term consequences, you do have a decline in IQ, and I found about an average of 8 points if you started at an adolescent age. You have a greater chance of being unemployed or not getting a job due to nowadays careers are drug testing a lot, so they can really narrow out their field. And they have possible addiction, so about 9% of adults, and about 17% of people who started smoking in their teenage years found to be addicted, which is smoking marijuana every day. Possible development of opioid abuse, which is a painkiller. So people that are users may hit a wall and feel like they can't get much higher, and they might result in opioid abuse, but it is not a long-term consequence fact. And also, same with the last one, you may have financial difficulties if you're a user. You might be prone to financial difficulties if you are spending too much money on the drug, or you are not putting your money where it needs to go, such as in bills. There isn't treatment for marijuana specifically because it isn't a major drug that causes harm. It's actually a medicine. So they do have treatment for marijuana disorders. People that seek treatment for marijuana disorders usually have been using every day for nearly 10 years or longer and have tried to quit at least 6 times but have failed. Most often people who experience marijuana disorders also suffer from other psychiatric disorders such as schizophrenia, for example. So what we can do for people with marijuana disorders, we can use cognitive behavioral therapy, which are a type of psychotherapy that teaches strategies to users to gain a better control of their life, ultimately stop their drug use, address any other problems that co-occur with their usage. Cognitive management, which is another type of therapeutic management. It involves frequent monitoring of the users, basically trying to figure out what triggers them to use, what behavioral factors are involved, and this usually involves a type of reward system I found when their behavior is monitored and they are doing well and not relapsing. There is motivational enhancement therapy. This is supposed to be a positive intervention, meaning to change the environment from the user within and allow for greater success in a rapid time. I did read that this type of therapy was not meant to fully treat, but just motivate from within to change. And this includes my works cited and my references. Thank you for listening, and I hope you guys all learned a lot. Thank you.